All right, gonna try and continue off where I left from yesterday. That one turned out pretty long, but I guess some other things is that today I got the medicine in that we had ordered for Gon, and it took 2 days to get here. He lived for about 2 more days when we found out about his sickness. I I don't know how to feel about that. If he would have made it in time, if he would have had a couple hours to have that medicine, but it's up in the air as to how well it would have worked. I mean, nothing you can do about it now. He's, you know, he's passed away. He's died now. So, we have that medicine. When I say we, I mean the cats and I. And if anyone else were to get sick like that, we'd have something to give them. Which is some consolation. At least we have that medicine. Another thing I wanted to talk about really quick is this channel I saw on YouTube. I'm not gonna name it specifically or anything like that. It just has one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to writing or analyzing a series. And this is a personal thing. It doesn't intrinsically make the person wrong or anything, even though I dislike it. And I think they're wrong. But it is the kind of person who takes the series that they review and they'll say something like, actually the entire thing is good. There's no spot where it's actually bad. And when they analyze it, basically what they do is they take anything that could be a criticism or people will commonly cite as bad, and they'll change it with language like it's underrated. This underrated aspect, this underrated conflict, this underrated character reaction, this underrated, and they'll replace things that are disliked with the word underrated. And again, it's a bit of that word manipulation, because I feel like underrated commonly is taken to be a positive thing, that actually it's good but just not enough people have seen it. And I feel like that's how most people take it. I don't know if other people see it differently, but for me, whenever you say something is underrated, you're just trying to say it's good but no one appreciates it, that kind of thing, or not enough people appreciate it. And even though the word underrated literally just means, it hasn't been rated enough, either poorly or positively or things like that, but it is used in a way that's sort of like underdog. But reframing things that are commonly, and I guess you could like, what's the word I'm looking for? You have evidence for, and through measure or quality, consistency, impact. You have different ways to sort of measure out, like, this is poor, this is poorly done, this is a negative, this is bad. And someone going and just actually calling it underrated, making sure to never actually address the criticism of it in any meaningful way, just referring to that aspect as underrated. That part is just something that gets to me. It always irritates me when people do that. And another thing is when people will write the story for the writers and then use what they came up with as what the writers did. And this is something that this channel will do, is that they'll take something that's a negative or is poorly done and say actually it's good, and then come up with something that was not in the original whatsoever, just thrown together, sloppily, or is just reusing parts. And then the person will say, actually it's a thematic through line making parallels to a previous so and so, and it's the author, the story, it's a continuation building on the themes of the so and so. And then you actually go and watch it, and it's very clear that no, it was just the author didn't have any ideas, so they just reused a concept again. Or they weren't making a parallel, they were just redoing an idea because they couldn't think of anything else to do. And it was, it's lazy, it was tone breaking, and the person will be like, it was a subversion of all of our expectations, and actually it was meant to play on the reality of the thing, and to create a thematic message regarding how, and it's actually a parallel to this character and their journey, and how this happening affected their lives, but now this happened to that, and the almost unusual way that this character arrived into the setting of. Meanwhile, it's just the author coming up with any convenience or just like anything they can think of, reusing old ideas, completely messing around because they couldn't think of anything else to do, and so on and so forth. And the person will go in and write the story for the author, and then they can't separate the story that they've written in their head from what actually is happening in the thing. They have now written it for the person. And so when that person says, actually the entire thing is good, it's like, no, it isn't. What is good is that idea you just had, and what you just did to try and make sense of what you were seeing, and what you just did to write the thing for the person. What is not good is the actual source material and what they actually did. And you have just added depth. You created a through line. You created themes. Congratulations. You're a writer now. You're the writer now. But you can't conflate that with replacing what the original actually was with what you've just done, and then call it a day as if that's what the original story was. You haven't actually... Here's the thing, that's not a defense, if that makes any sense. You're not defending the story at that point. It's almost like, it's not deflection. Deflection's not the right word. It's almost like enabling. It's not that word either. Although enabling is part of what happens when that happens. But, what's the word for it? It's like, think of an analogy. It's like, a kid creates something for a competition, but then the parent goes and makes their own version of it with all of their experience and know-how and hindsight, and then presents that as what their kid did, if that makes any sense. And then the person says, well, everything my kid did was great and good and high quality and to the highest of standards. Meanwhile, you're presenting what you did, which is thought out, has actual like thematic ties and relevancies, and is more, depthful. But the reality is that you can't defend a point you have to rewrite reality for. At that point, you're just creating something entirely new. That's the best way I can think to word it right now. That's not a defense anymore. Now you're just going out of your way to replace it with something that works when the original did not. If that makes any sense. And that's one of my pet peeves. There's a particular show I'm thinking about that a lot of people did that with. It has a certain boy with curly, brownish black hair, a red shirt with a yellow star on it. And people will do that for a certain other series with another boy who grows up into a man with spiky black hair and an orange shirt with a blue belt. Who's part of a certain alien race. And people will go out of their way to write a story that the original person did not write, and then say that that's what was going on, or present it, that's absolutely not what was happening in the original, or that is clearly a gap. The person loses the ability to separate. Them trying to fill in the gaps and make it make sense with the reality of what the thing actually did or what it was. It is not to the show's merit that you have to write for it, or that you have to write for the writers. At that point, you're just falling in love with the story in your own head that you wrote, and then attaching it onto the thing as if that actually fulfills it or fixes it. But the thing is that it's not there. It's like a bad relationship where the other person is neglectful, and then you have to go in and almost like coping strategy, fill in their motivations for them on how it was a loving or a healthy thing, or how it was actually good for you, and things like, and then you fill in the relationship with that, and that actually the person had this in mind, and they were doing it because of this, and they remembered this and that I would like this, and then I went like, and it's like, no, the person just forgot. The person's neglectful. It's like, you made something very compelling, very emotional. You would do a very good job. They should have hired you to do that part. They should have gotten you to come in and give advice on how to work that. Because the original did not do that at all. But anyway, I don't know how to address it in much of a different way. I'm sure later on I'll be able to think of it in a more concise way than I've just said it. But the gist of it is just people writing stuff for the author and then holding that as if that's what they were doing, coming up with things on their own. And then saying, actually, the whole thing is good, and I'm going to explain why, but their explanation is just writing it for them. It's not actually explaining. It's not actually a defense. It's just you replacing their work with something more concise, or the fact that you can think of that shows how weak the original thing is, and how unthought out or just what's the word? Just like the word I'm looking for isn't mindless. It's not necessarily unstructured. Just how unthought out. It's a sloppy way to say it. Unthought out. How I'll just throw in unthought out. It's a mix of unthought out, not mindless, but somewhere in that zone, that not quite improvisational either. Though there is improv involved. It's some word circling all those ideas. I can't quite think of it right now. But anyway, the thing that I wanted to get onto today, after talking about that, is getting on with talking about the story ideas that I was reading through, and getting to that big idea that I really wanted to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and start looking through and doing that now. Because if I have no one to talk excitedly to about my ideas and interest to, then I can at least talk to myself excitedly about the things that I'm interested in and want to do and work on, you know? So I'm gonna start from the bottom of this document and work my way back up. Let's see. Let's see. Was there really nothing here else? I remember I talked about Vanilla Dread yesterday. Ah, yeah. This was for something. What was this? Space or time travel? Let's see. Forever Machine. The death of the universe has occurred. One person survived somehow and now lives in a lightless, timeless void of nothingness. The person's only companion is a rotating fan that somehow made it through the end of everything and still runs. It is the only sound besides the person's own noise. The person is effectively immortal, as concepts such as time and passage and expiration and basically all the rules that governed the universe are gone, because there is it doesn't exist anymore. The person is effectively immortal with nothing to do and discovers the strange anomalies that perpetuate the running of this fan. Let's see. I forgot that idea was there. That's funny. And this is something that I was very fond of, is for the Vanilla Dread idea, where there's an ice cream shop in the apocalypse. One I retooled it for the when I was in that class. You know, there's different categories. So one of them is musical. So I retooled it for if it was a musical, and I came up with a single like musical scene idea instead of writing down the plot synopsis. I wrote down the music, so I'm gonna sing it. There's something in the air, and I'm not talking about the radiation. No, I messed it up. No, I can't edit it out. Because I'm not gonna go back and edit it. Okay, let me restart. There's something in the air, and I'm not talking about the radiation. I've still got a smile on my face despite the desperate situation. 'Cause there's something that brings us together, something that keeps us all as one. And despite the bleakness in our lives, lets us have a little fun. talking about love, love, love. 'Cause love is all we need. We're gonna survive, we're gonna thrive in this wasteland of ours. 'Cause love, love, love. Yes, love is all we need. We're gonna make it, not gonna break it. I just can't shake it. 'Cause love is all we need. Da 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 bum ba da 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 bum ba da 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 da. And that was the music that I came up with. If it were to become a musical. There's something in the air, and I'm not talking about the radiation. I still got a smile on my face about the desperate situation. Alright, and this is one of the ones that I read yesterday that I would actually... Most of these I probably wouldn't actually do on my own. They were just like quick things that I came up with to try and contribute to the ideas, you know. And that other idea I mentioned yesterday with Bell Broomstick, it would be that as he continues, or he or she, as he or she continues, that they find worth in life again as they go through and paradoxically, ironically help these people and, you know, discover more things about human behavior and themselves and excuse me, life and stuff. Excuse me. But anyway, this was the other idea that I had here that I would actually do. That, yeah, it is called... Okay, sorry, I was looking at something. I was checking to see if... Yeah, there's no... Okay, good. It is called An Eternal Moment Piece. And the joke with the title is that Eternal Moments Piece is EMP, an EMP, like electromagnetic pulse. And the gist of it is, in a future era, there is a pastoral planet in which a war far in the past nullified all of the planet's electromagnetism, surrounding it in a field that rejects all electricity. The people live in a lush world with no technology. Lush, don't imagine like a jungle or something like that. Think of it more like a... I guess if I were to think about it visually, think of like a pastoral town in like Europe. or like Greece, you know, something pre-industrial revolution, that kind of thing. Not like a jungle planet or anything like that. More like a modest pastoral town. Let's see. The people live in a lush world with no technology. One day, some inhabitants discover evidence that someone from outside, which is outer space, landed on the planet. And fearing that that person may be carrying something to start an incident they'll have no remedy for, like a pathogen or technology or something, they go on the search for the intruder from space, who has already disguised his or herself among the populace. The intruder is a specialist engineer from space called a Beaver, and Beaver is an acronym. I think it stood for Bacteria Electrolyzed Advanced Versatile Engineering Rig. That's what it was. Bacteria Electrolyzed Advanced Versatile Engineering Rig. Beaver. Who crash-landed. The people on the planet care for a tree that will reach into space someday if it is properly cared for. And the idea is that, well, basically, any electricity that enters the range of this planet gets shut down. So you can't fly a spaceship into it. You have to drop something from the spaceship into the atmosphere, which will then land, like a balloon or things like that. You can't have anything like So it's like you have. I really liked the idea of having the space and the technology and all that, and then having to switch to like advanced analog solutions instead, like a hot air balloon, or but it's filled with like advanced space gas, but it's not electricity. So there's like wiggle room. It's not. It's not like those old episodes of Star Trek where they land on a planet and it's like, it's Scotland, but it's in space. It's L.A., but it's in space. It's Jack the Ripper and London, but in space. That kind of thing, where it's basically just a set that is that area, but the context is that it's a planet, but it's just that in space. but but the idea is that, and something that the beaver suit does is that it can switch into like an analog mode where it uses other means of being able to function, like different chemicals or things like that to maintain heat and its ability to like do stuff. So it would have been this really cool. The idea is this really cool exploration in my mind, at least of finding analog solutions to different kinds of technology. So you're going from the space stuff, which has electricity and lasers and advanced engineering and power sources and microchips and conduits, and then instead, as soon as this planet is entered into, you have to switch to analog solutions, and the having this spaceships that deliver analog solutions inside of them, spaceships with hot air balloons inside of them, and the people on the planet, they can't use cars. They can't use like advanced like speeder bikes or anything. And I think just for the setting, I wouldn't want like combustion engines or anything like that. I'd want it to be themed mainly around. Yeah, I wouldn't want like steam engines or combustion. I would want mainly like physics based solutions. So like they ride bikes and things like that. But they found like advanced versions of taking those mechanics and turning it into and taking those mechanics and turning it into something more advanced and manageable, and exploring all the interesting ways that these people live in this planet where literally electricity can't exist inside of it. Now, this is different from like the electricity they need to run their brains and things like that. Suspension of disbelief. It is science fiction, so it wouldn't literally be all forms of electricity, but it would be things like the electronics, technology, engineering, even lightning. There wouldn't be lightning on the planet, or electrical storms. There wouldn't even be static. There would be no like static electricity on the planet either. Even if you like rub your clothes, like no matter what you do, you couldn't get static electricity out of anything, because electricity wouldn't be able to exist on this planet, and things like that. Ions and stuff, they just wouldn't form. The positron, neutrons, electrons, they wouldn't be able to form. I don't even know if there would be. I'd have to do more research on that to think about that more. But the idea that the people have is that, well, basically, to get anyone off the planet, you would have to use that analog solution to get them up into the atmosphere high enough to sort of be on the edge, and then the ships would deploy something that would then catch and then lift them up into the ship outside of the zone of that effect, or lowering down an analog solution from space, which would then, get pulled up into, out of the planet's range in regards to its effect. But the idea that the people have is that they're going to grow this tree that will eventually reach up into the atmosphere, into space, and it is going to grow. And the idea is that there are other trees like this in the universe, in the galaxy, solar system, however big the setting is, and that they know that it can grow into space. So the idea is that they're going to grow it, and they're carving it. It's becoming like a structure, rather than taking years and years to try and build something into space and using up resources. This tree, and it's not going to destroy the planet either. It's a very fertile planet, and the tree isn't going to, like, that they figured out the logistics of that. It's not going to kill the planet during the process of doing this, but it's eventually it'll grow into space, and then they'll be able to use it. And it's a tree. It provides oxygen and an environment inside of it, and eventually they'll be able to use this to walk up it, and potentially it'll be a means for things from space, like a spaceport, or like a space elevator almost, a means for things from space to come down to the planet, and things from the planet to go up into space, something like that. That's the basis of the idea. And that there's a person on the planet who has to come investigate something from space, who is an engineer, who is, and they discover, like, the person's pod or whatever they arrived in the planet with, and see, the suit is somewhere and the engineer is somewhere, and there'd be like a journey, and it would be the contrast of having like this space suit that's kind of like ridged and mechanical and kind of like brutal looking in this more like analog environment, but it's still able to function. And the design of the spacesuit, usually with sci-fi spacesuits, they're based around like the light, like they have like the light patterns on them. They have the neon lights moving, not necessarily neon lights, but they have the light outlines moving across the legs, or a spot where the suit is glowing. That's like a typical sci-fi thing. The suit has glowy spots. The visor glows. There's like trimming of lights that form like a line up the arm, or I've seen spacesuits. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Spacesuits with the lights on them, and that they're all glowy and stuff. Samus's spacesuit. Actually, I guess Clone Troopers don't really have that, do they? But there's plenty of sci-fi that has. Or Tron, the suits with the lights. Samus suits with the lights. Marvel, there's plenty of suits with lights in that as well. I'm trying to think of other sci. Does Star Trek have suits with lights? There are alien races in Star Trek that have suits with the lights on them. Let's see. Mass Effect. Yeah, I go to think about it and I immediately just blank on it. Anyway, Destiny, I guess. But the idea would be is that this spacesuit, to suit the setting, which has no electricity, so no electric lights, so the suit would look like it's, rather than having that technological with the lights and stuff, the suit would be based around shadows. And the best example I can think of is the La Sagrada Familia. How the whole thing is a stone structure carved to take advantage of natural light and shadows. And so the idea with this spacesuit is that it would have that architectural feeling, like it's the design of it has been carved, and rather than emphasizing and being accented by these, glowing colored lights like a lot of spacesuits have, it would be accented and have the shadows moving across it. The way that light hits it, it would emphasize certain parts of the suit and shadow other parts of the suit. So rather than like a cool glowing strip or pattern of lights on the suit or whatever, it would have like spots where it's like really dark and it emphasizes the shape of the suit and the way it sort of like stands out in the environment, like seeing a walking La Sagrada Familia cathedral, like carved out and moving, and that's kind of the feel that I would want that spacesuit to have. Yeah. Anyway, and then that made me think of another idea I had with relating to a tree. It was an idea for something where there's a tree, and the tree enables time travel. And basically, the tree has been around, so, like tree rings, how tree rings, as a tree gets older, it forms more rings. And the idea is that this tree, when you go inside of it, is that each of its rings is every era that it's lived through, it's like quote unquote stored the experience of being in that era in its rings as it ages. And so each of its rings encompasses a time period. And so as you travel through each ring, you go through like a different time period or a different era. So you go through the tree and you end up in a different time. The tree's sort of like a singular, though I'm not sure if the tree has just stored information and it's sort of like a memories, recreating the time that it lived through. So kind of simulation like, or if it literally is time travel or some solution kind of around those two ideas. I'd have to think about that. Hold on, I got to check something really quick. Interesting. Okay, hold on just a second. I gotta do a thing that has caught my attention. There we go. Okay. There you go, Ken. There you go. You're all good. Just checking. Alright. But, and the idea is that there's a kind of a rot going on in the tree that is decaying different rings. And, each ring coincides with a specific time period. And it's sort of like the tree is a record of time, and it's kind of so maybe more of like storing memories and information. It's losing history, and this rot is decaying away the stored time and time frames and history and time periods. And you basically, the idea is that the characters have to go into the tree and go through its different rings and do these sort of like time-related things and try and figure out what is going on, and maybe even excise specific points and periods of time if the rot, just has to be removed entirely and the tree has to mend itself, that kind of thing, taking different aspects like that into consideration. But anyway, now to talk about what I actually wanted to talk about the entire time. Which is that Western idea that I had. And I want to get very excited and talk about it. So, hold on a sec. Let me find my things that I wrote for it. I don't know why I didn't just pull this up ahead of time when I really should have. Let me see. Hold on. This is the lovely part of these journals. Waiting. Bum ba dum ba da dum dum bum dum da 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 dum bum ba dum bum dum bum ba dum ba dun 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 ba dum bum ba dum ba ba da dum dun da da dum bum do 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 da 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 dum da dum ba dum da dum ba dum ba dum ba dum da dum ba dum da dum da dum ba-dum, da-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, almost there. Da-dum, ba-dum, da-dum, ba-dum, 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 da-dum, 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 da-dum. Okay, almost. Just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Almost there. All the way. Oh, yeah. I forgot I did that, but you know what? I don't mind at all. Okay. Screenplay format template. Open, close, open, untie, okay, and there it is. Okay. Oh. Okay, I'll have to talk about those later. And that one for sure. Okay. But, talking about that Western idea, the core concept of it, and so far, it just has, a placeholder name, which I've pretty much just been treating as its proper name for a while, ever since I came up with it. And it is called SXCR, which is the name of the planet itself. And the idea is that, well, just to start with the setting, is that it's a planet called SXCR, which, I just said. But the planet is in a... It's one of those, how do you call it? Free roaming planets, where it doesn't have a specific orbit or a star that it's attached to. But it does receive daylight from... The idea is that there's... how do I describe this? There's a... Because, solar systems also move in real life. So, as our planet rotates around the sun is also rotating its way around the Milky Way at the same time. And everything is and the Milky Way itself is also rotating and also doing its own thing in its own tier. The solar system's not just sitting still, it's also making its way. So the idea is that you have this planet, it's called SXCR, and there is a star with its own thing going on, rotating around SXCR itself. And it's not like orbiting SXCR, it just happens that the movement path of this star goes around SXCR, which is just sitting still in the middle of space. And it's this unusual anomaly of a planet. It doesn't rotate, it doesn't move at all. And it's just sitting in the middle of space. And basically humanity has... Earth exists in the world of... in the setting of SXCR. And humans have gone into space. And one such ship came to SXCR and began colonizing it. However, the planet has some weird anomalies to it, which is... Okay, so here's another thing. SXCR has a moon. It has a moon that is entirely covered in water. And SXCR itself is a lot of desert. There's a lot of desert on SXCR. There are other biomes, but a lot of it is desert. And basically, the planet used to have 2 moons. Planet used to have 2 moons, except one of the moons crashed into the planet, and one left behind what you could call a mountain range, which is just massive fragments of the moon sticking out of the planet. And 2 is that it is very possible that because there was one water moon, that this other moon also gave a lot of the water that SXCR currently has. It may have had water on its own, but it's also theorized that a lot of its water also came from the collision of this moon into the planet, which left behind its fragments as like pseudo mountains. I'd say pseudo mountains because in real life mountain ranges are where like plates collide and the earth gets pushed upward, or a volcanic eruption drags and shoots molten material and things like that. So it's something else that sort of crashed and became embedded and sort of meshed with the rest of the environment. It's like if a meteor crashed into the earth, but it didn't like burn up or disintegrate. It just like stuck into it and then formed a landmass, a landmark. And it's so that's one thing. And then so that's another curiosity with the planet. And then another thing about SXCR is that for some reason, another thing with SXCR is that it has no natives. Like, not that it doesn't have, Let me rephrase that. It has no sentient natives. It had creatures on it. It has creatures on it. It has native species, but nothing that you could call a society or like a culture, you know? Not even something primitive that was like living there and then humans arrived and that they can like recognize them as it's just like animals, you know, like coming into an area and there's, you know, insects, mammals, and they've got their own things going on, but nothing you could call like a growing society or organized or anything like that. And a curiosity of the planet is that for some reason anyone who enters the planet's atmosphere, their blood will become candy, but only when it exits their body. So basically, they're not like pumping, you know, candy through their arteries or anything. It's still blood, but the moment it exits, the moment it touches the air, boom, becomes candy. So you never even see it be blood. Like literally, instantaneously, it just shoots out as candy the moment it comes out of their body. And so a part of like the way that the world works is that extrapolating it from that, you know, I came up with the way that the part of the world works is that hospitals and places like, you know, blood packs and blood banks and stuff are very important on SXCR. They have to use very specific like vacuum sealed apparatuses and spaces to keep blood in. And if those bags pop, or if they're even exposed to the air for even a second, boom, they turn into candy. And so there's like a major there's like a space station hanging above the planet that has like a massive major blood bank that that stores a lot of like usable blood, and when they transport it to the planet, it has to be kept sealed in these packs. And when the like ambulances, you know, quote unquote ambulances, when that stuff when that comes, you know, medical support, they have to use very specific vacuum sealed blood cells. Cell refers to the bag, the pack that you keep the blood in. They have to use very specific vacuum sealed cells to keep blood in, and transferring it into the person. It can't touch the air, or like as it's pouring out, it's just turning into candy and things like that. And so a lot of people born on SXCR, they will never actually see what blood looks like real blood. They've never. And then it can become terrifying if they go to space. If they leave the planet's atmosphere and they get injured, they're going to see blood for the first time. And that's the thing, it's not a permanent effect either. It's literally just if you're in the atmosphere. So if you leave the planet, you will just have normal blood again. When it exits your body, you'll just bleed. And then the moment you go back in, all of that, even like the blood stains, will just switch into candy, basically. And every person has a different one. I'm not sure yet at the moment if there's like heritability, you know? Like let's say you have a father whose blood becomes like Tic Tacs. And then the son will also have that. But it's as far as I've thought of it, like it is unique enough to each person what happens with their blood when it makes contact with the air, that happens. And I wanted to talk about where I came up with that, and it's a combination of three things. Mainly, the first one is that I wanted to make a western, but but I didn't want to make it. It was basically as a form of censorship, just like I remember I was out, cleaning up a yard, raking some leaves, and I was just thinking about this Western idea, and I had this scene in my head in the bar where guy gets shot, gets blown away, and then I was like, ooh, but there'd be a lot of blood, wouldn't there? It'd be a little bit gratuitous, I wouldn't want anyone, I wouldn't want anyone, saying that and seeing, blood everywhere, and so I thought to myself, so in that instant, I was just like, I got to replace it. So I thought, like, oh, we'll just have a bunch of, like, wrapped candies pop out of the guy. And I was just like, there we go, censorship. And I was just like, that's kind of interesting. What if I took that really seriously? And then the other thing later that I added onto it is there's a game called No More Heroes. And in No More Heroes, when you defeat a guy, coins will just like gush out of the person and just shoot everywhere, along with cartoonish amounts of blood. But the point is, coins will just shoot out of the guy, and that imagery of just like a lot of a strange object just pouring out of someone, as if it were blood, but it's a completely different object or substance. I was like, that's kind of compelling. I think, oh, okay, there's something else. And then the third thing was I was watching Ron, the Akira Kurosawa film, and in that film, like, blood is just like bright candy red, this super bright, vibrant red color. And I was just thinking about that, and I was like, I mean, obviously it's not. I went because I was like, I kind of like the appearance of that, like over exaggeratedly red, blood going on. And I was just thinking to myself, like, in real life, the only thing I can really think that would match that would be something like, again, syrup, candy syrup, and things like that. So that just kind of added on to it. So, there would be people who, again, candy. So there would be people whose, if they bled, it would turn into candy syrup. Bright, vibrant colors coming out of the person. Not just because it wouldn't just be hard candies. It would also be like candy substances as well. That kind of like candy drink, baby bottle pop, something like that. It would be like all manner of variety of things, and it would be to the point where there would even be like bounties where let's say there's a very particularly uncommon form of someone has a particularly uncommon form of like what their kind of candy their blood turns into. You could actually use that as a bounty, just like where's the guy, where's the man whose blood becomes Tic Tacs, and nobody else's blood, as far as becomes Tic Tacs. Of course, it wouldn't be called Tic Tacs. It would have its own unique thing, but you could actually use that as an identifier for some people, depending on how unique it is. And so that's one whole mechanic of that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about now would be the main character. And it would mainly just be like one main character who travels around and meets other people who are companions for a little bit, and then they kind of go their separate ways and things like that. I don't think I would do any permanent companion characters, but the main character's name is Waka Paisley. And I didn't know this till later. Waka means water. I didn't name him that for that reason. But, again, just like I was talking about before, turns out to be very thematically appropriate to the setting, which largely has to do, which, is largely powered by, and it has a lot of associations with water. So the main character, his name is Waka Paisley, and he is on a journey to hunt a particular person down. This particular person... Ooh, I almost forgot that. I'm glad I remembered. This particular person is an old acquaintance of his by the name of Whiskey Paisley. So you got Waka Paisley and you got Whiskey Paisley, and he is hunting down... He is hunting down a character by the name of Whiskey Paisley. And going on all his adventures and so on. I don't want to spoil a lot of the ideas I came up with. But basically Waka himself he's sort of like this gangly guy, handsome, good looks, clean shaven, kind of like long hair, semi-futuristic looking, but still with that, and a lot of like Western feel to him. And he's journeying through. He's got his his signature guns, and he's mischievous and friendly is the way I could put it. It's one of those things where I'd rather describe his actions than come up with like a bio for him. Excuse me. But I would, in a few words, describe him as laid back and easygoing, but not... He doesn't tease. He's playful, but he's not like teasing, if that makes any sense. He's very focused, quick on his feet, and it's a bit hard to ascertain. Kind of like that Sergio Leone type guy. Like, you're not quite sure what it is he's looking for, or what it is he wants, or why he's doing what he's doing. Whether it's out of some sense of justice or something like that. Some selfish gain, or just wanting to play around. And he's just having a bit of fun, But, he's that kind of character. I have the 60-page screenplay that I wrote of, like, the opening right here. One thing, though, I wanted to talk about is that another anomaly of the world of SXCR is that in it, sometimes people are born essentially part animal, if that makes sense. Animal people, but not in the usual sense. Basically, there's a wide range of how that happens. And sometimes it's more grotesque, sometimes it's more traditional, and it's like... But that's the thing is that all of they're... How do I explain it? They're all genetically human. So if you studied those people who have, animal features to varying degrees and varying appearances and physical presentations of these traits. If you studied them genetically, you wouldn't find a mutation. They would just be genetically human entirely. You wouldn't even find animal DNA. So they're like, in practice, it's sort of like humans being made to look like those animals, if that makes sense. Like, it's hard. In Hunter x Hunter, there's a particular part with the chimera ants where there's that chimera ant lady who stabs people with her stinger and mutates them. And there's that one guy who becomes sort of like a dog creature, but he's a human kind of made into the shape of a dog, but he's still a human. That's kind of how I would describe it. That's not what inspired it, but it's the closest comparison I can make, is that these are humans more shaped like those animals than it is animal people or them literally being those animals. If that makes sense. So in this first screenplay, I've got like three examples, and they all look different ways. So you have a character named Blackjack, and she's a jackrabbit, essentially. That in terms of appearance, she is a jackrabbit woman with black fur, Blackjack, and she runs a bar called Blackjack's. But and the way hers comes out is that it's kind of what you'd imagine when you hear animal person. She looks like an anthropomorphic black jackrabbit. Just like a traditional character sort of thing. Very normal sort of animal character, anthropomorphic animal character. Very cute. I can't think, because nothing too unusual or anything like that. She's just yeah. And then there's another character who is a horse, quote unquote horse man, and his appearance is a lot more odd mix of human and horse. So he has front-facing eyes, which horses don't have. So his teeth are more human-ish, but on a horse-like head, and his eyes are front-facing, which horses don't have. And his body is like an odd mix of human horse, like anatomical proportions, sort of like part hands, part hooves, and he's able to do horse-like movement, but it's like uncanny. But he's like extra big because of it. It's like the combination of features is more unnerving in terms of its combination of human and animal features. And then there's another character, and sometimes it comes out like really odd, where the character will even gain like extra limbs, or they'll be called a certain animal, but it's only through a surface level resemblance to that. Again, they're not literally anthropomorphic animal people. They're humans, sort of like in the shape of these creatures. So sometimes it'll come out with like really odd results, like multiple limbs, or strange alterations in size, or things like that. Just weird combinations of features, even beyond natural ones. So just like, normally instead of a 1-to-1, that person's arm Instead of an arm, they have something that's more a human arm. They have something more like what the animal has. It'll be they have a human arm, and on top of that, there's like an extra limb. It'll have odd combos like that. But that's another facet of it. And and another part of the story, there would be a side story basically, where there is an escaped convict who has escaped from a what's it called, max security detention prison, basically a big old futuristic prison. And there's an inspector slash detective slash officer assigned to the case to go capture this highly dangerous criminal who has escaped. And along with him is assigned ow, along with him is assigned one of the robots who is a security guard who was guarding that cell block that the prisoner escaped from. And that robot gets deputized to go along with the detective to assist him in tracking and hunting down this escaped fugitive. And so you would have the main story with Waka Paisley, and then you would have cutaways to this side story that sort of intersects occasionally with the two stories as they go along. And as far as I can think, that's mainly it. I think another thing I could really just, as far as I can think right now, but another thing I think I could describe is that Earth does exist, and Earth's government sort of loosely govern. Again, it's like the Wild West. So like the United States governed the West, but it was very loose. They didn't really have a lot of control, and it was kind of up to homesteaders to form security and committees and local governments and mayors, and that they would deputize people. And then if you really wanted to like do something, you had to go back. You had to travel to the nearest proper city in order to. So basically, that's kind of how it is. Is that SXCR is a Wild West type place, far from civilized, settled Earth, and it has like farm regions. It has counties. It has that sort of like Wild West setup, and even it itself has like proper large cities, and then the regions outside of those, which are more your Wild West town, but more science fiction like. And SXCR, it has like a space station up in orbit, so I thought that would be cool, taking a break from the sort of dusty western to like ride up a space elevator, get in a spaceship, and then it's like, oh, now the cowboy is in space, like properly, and it sort of feels like a shift, but it makes sense to the world. I remember that initial idea I had of like the battle taking place in the bar. I had to rewrite that when I was writing the script, because I realized like it would be very irresponsible for the kind of character that Waka Paisley is, for him to start a fight in the bar and then for the fight to destroy the bar, because the whole point is that he wants to help save this person's establishment. And the whole point is that at the end her establishment is saved, and there's hope for the town to be restored and come back to life. As hope isn't lost yet. Blackjack isn't doing this for no reason. She's not just in denial. There's a real chance for something to happen here, and he's helping to preserve that. It's not just a waste of time. There's a real potential for hope to happen in this region. And then I thought to myself, like, man, it would be real irresponsible if he were to start the fight. So instead, I wrote him to be more like clever and quick-witted and very sharp in making sure that he didn't escalate a fight without needing to, against a gang that would then turn into the bar getting destroyed. And that helped to cement the idea of the underground network that runs through the city. Blackjack, and it also connects to Blackjack being a rabbit, because I didn't even mean to do. Again, you write it, and the pieces come together, and then you figure out how to increase it and make it work. I didn't even think about that when I started, but like, she's a rabbit. There's tunnels. Rabbits build burrow holes. There's a place under the city. It'll also help him to keep the fight away from the bar. This is the thing you do in the planning phase, where you figure out, like, oh shoot, I created a through line. A theme is emerging. I didn't even go for that. But I wasn't even doing that on purpose, but just writing it and making sure to be responsible and not just doing things just for the sake of the spectacle, but actually thinking about the intelligence of the characters. It's like, okay, so we're going to use the underground thing. We're going to have, that'll give a chance for the underground thing to shine, show off the foundation of the city, which is underneath. It'll give Blackjack a chance to show her the knowledge of her home and how much she loves her town. And it'll give them a chance to redirect the guys away by ending up in another building, which will pull the fight away, which will save the bar, which will give more chance for mobility, and it all worked. It comes together. Perfect. But, basically, here, give me just a second. Hold on just a sec. Let me check the last of my notes. Let's see. Space elevator. Yeah, I did mention that. Oh, yeah. Ah. Yeah. But, oh man. I've just thought of so many, the basic outline. I even have, like, the ending in mind of how this would go. A general idea of the ending. If it needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted. But just like a general ending point of where I want the characters to end up. But, it's not the most concrete thing in the world, but it's a very general idea of what the goal is at the end of it all. And just enjoying the journey and building up to that. But enjoying the process of, yeah. I'm just thinking to myself, but I get really excited when I think about the mixing together sort of like Y2K looks, because Y2K had, for me, Y2K and the early 2000s was the last time that the world really felt like it had potential and hope and a future, if that makes any sense. And I don't mean the world as in the people of the world. I mean the world more in a singular sense, like a person. Like if I was saying, it's the last time I had hope, but, I was really young. I couldn't even comprehend that concept. I'm speaking literally about, like, the world in a personified way. It was the last time the world itself, in a singular sense, felt like it really had potential and a future and like limitless options almost, just like, let's see what we're gonna do. What are things becoming? And I love how I know it might sound uh, awkward to say something this way, or it may not. It may not. But it always bothers me to say, I know it may sound strange, because the other person would say that all the time to try and make it look like they were always saying something weird and that only they understood. The superior, trying to single themselves out as special or superior, even when it was the most like obvious thing. They're like, I know it sounds weird, I know it sounds strange, I know it won't make sense to you, that kind of thing. Say like, I have exclusive knowledge on this thing, and so it always pet peeves me to say, I know it'll sound weird to you, I know this may sound strange, and it ugh I don't mean it in the sense of like, it'll perplex your mind, I have some exclusive knowledge, but I know it's not a common thing to say necessarily. That I really like how merchandised the early 2000s was, how it encapsulated like subcultures into like physical form, if that makes sense. Like early 2000s goth, and you have like the Ruby Gloom, you have the Hot Topic, kind of thing. Early Hot Topic, not like today Hot Topic, where it's just a bunch of pop culture stuff. Like that merchandised commercial grunge goth aesthetic with the striped leggings and the specific style of like punk dress with the black, Kuromi, Hello Kitty, and like the rock outfit. It was like this specific feeling to it, or like it was like the clicks of the 90s, but like crystallized into this physical form. And there was like a version of everything for each. So there was like a goth phone, if that makes sense. And it felt like the most approachable time, visually representing the sort of like surface element of a subculture, that sort of, it was like rebel and grunge and punk, but it was like wearable. It had physicalness to it, and it felt like amiable, if that makes sense. Like it was like it had an outlet. I don't know how to describe it properly, but so you had like the goth, and then you had like the Bratz, Pink, other version of Hello Kitty, where she's in where she's in like a super like bright flashy outfit, and you go from Kuromi to My Melody, that kind of thing, where the bright pinks and blues and pastels, My Little Ponies, the Y2K had so many different looks, like, and then you have the more technological part where it's like the bubbly designs. You have the iDogs and the MP3 players, and then you have the more like corporate kind of fresh aesthetic, and and then you had the ones that was the more like technological, again, as I just said, the Tamagotchi, the specific shape of the cell phones. You had the Nintendo DS, the Game Boy. You had and then you had the punk, you had that goth, you had the grunge, you had the pink and blue Bratz. I have this movie. It was a movie I really did enjoy watching. I think I actually still have the DVD. I kept it. It's that Barbie movie where with Lindsay Lohan in it. And it's 2D. I really liked that movie when I was younger, and I kept it. And or on the other side, you have Hot Wheels Acceleracers, and that has like its own aesthetic. It's such a specific. It didn't have one specific look. Again, it's so much potential and so many things coexisting all at once, and you had different categories of things. It didn't just have one look to it, if that makes sense. It was like so many ways. It was like the ultimate in finding a way to express yourself. And if you couldn't find that, you'd make a subculture. Or you combine the elements of two of them, and like they'd become combined into a whole new thing. And you would mix the pop with the punk and the or you would go hard into one or the other, or you would make your own thing that was in the mid. I want. It feels wild. For me, it mixes with Wild West because it was like a cultural Wild West. Like, what's gonna happen? Look at all this. We're exploring video games, movies. We're going into whole new directions, experimenting with new dimensions and possibilities, and what could this even look like? And going more mature, going more soft, going with a different tone. Going with mature but in different ways, mature but angsty, but mature but like sweet, or different, like experimentation. It was its own Wild West, and mixing the possibility of mixing that with actual like space western, because that just gets me excited. But yeah, like having mixing the technology in with that, where it's like the sort of like Y2K style technology, but mixed with like West. That gets me excited. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and stop here because I love these journals, but I also have other things I would like to do today. So there's more I'll want to talk about tomorrow, but I think for now, this is good enough. Alright, that's it.